Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow.
Never heard of it.
Ah!
Never heard of it. It's got one of the greatest actors of all
John
time.
Congrats to John.
Quickly becoming one of my favorite guests, Benjamin Solak, joining us to talk about all things NFL draft. And I asked him, I said, how you been? He said, good, it's draft season. Trying not to let the takes drive me too crazy. So that begs the question, Ben, what take is driving you the craziest right now?
Oh, brother. A lot of options.
Oh, brother.
Got love for Chris Sims, but when Will Anderson is ranked the fifth edge, I go a little stir crazy for an hour. I had to get up and take a lap. I had to walk around the house a little bit, put the phone down, not allowed to tweet for a second. I put a moratorium on new draft takes out about a couple weeks ago. I just tweeted out, no more new takes, no more new opinions. If you haven't watched the guy yet, you're not allowed to watch him.
Yeah.
I can't. The draft process is too long, and we're at the point where we're just now saying stuff to fill the air, fill the space. No more new draft takes.
Well, who did he have like 1 through 4? Do you remember?
I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I think you probably stopped once you heard that. You probably checked out.
I know he had Tyree Wilson above him. He had Lucas Van Ness above him, Nolan Smith, and then Will McDonald, the Iowa State kid, and then Anderson was number 5.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's start there. Let's start with the edge guys because this isn't going to bother you as much, but I have been watching tape now, albeit I watched 2022 tape. Now, I know the Will Anderson 2021 tape is otherworldly from what I hear. I mean, I've seen him on TV, but to watch end zone tape's a different thing. I think the distance between Tyree and Will Anderson isn't much. And they're two totally different prospects, so it kind of depends on what your flavor you're after is. But I got to say, I watched Will Anderson, and I'm impressed with his game and that he's a really good football player and a good athlete, and he seems like a great kid. I just see more upside with Tyree Wilson, which isn't a hot take, and I am a sucker for length, and part of that might be because I didn't have it as a young rusher. So what say you about the conversation that's going on about these two edge guys, and is it actually possible that Tyree Wilson leapfrogs him on draft day?
Yeah, when I watch prospects, I'm a sucker for size. That's because I'm 5'10" and can't play in the NFL. I like the big fellas. So Tyree and Anderson, absolutely, they play in different roles. I think a big part of why Tyree is consensus viewed as a lesser prospect than Anderson is some of the biographical details. Wilson's going to be 23 when he enters the league, right? And he started producing late, which you tend to worry about guys whose production came once they got a couple years older than the dudes they were facing, right? You kind of just get a physical advantage. He's also got Lisfranc issues in his foot, and that's obviously that's a scary injury. It's a worrisome thing, especially for a guy who's going to be carrying 270, 275, right? So there's some bio stuff that I think makes Wilson concerning. With that said, from what I understand, if you tell me the first edge rusher is coming off the board at 3 to the Cardinals, it goes quarterback, and then the Cardinals can't trade the pick. From what I understand, they like Tyree Wilson better than Will Anderson. I think there's a very solid chance Wilson's off the board before Anderson is. With Wilson, right, you're getting that big guy who can crush a pocket. He can work, his big 5 technique. He can, take on a double team, and he can move guys against the run. But then you turn on that Will Anderson film, and he's playing like inside the tackle. He's playing 4-eye, and he's doing similar stuff. It's just not going to be the role he plays in the NFL. And in the role he plays, you really want a guy who's a consistent double-digit sack dude. You take him top 3, put him in a wide alignment, get after the passer. Yeah. And that's just not really Will. He's so much better at like fighting with power for power in the trenches. He's a little bit of like a square peg in a round hole where his traits don't match his like size and his role as nicely and neatly as you'd like. Will reminds me a lot of Josh Sweaty when he came out of Florida State.
Oh, that's
where it's
interesting.
Like, all right, like athletically, I can see this for sure. Like you got the tools. He's got that ability to just kind of stick an arm on a guy and just walk him back, and you don't think he's going to do that at his size. But then with Sweat, it took a couple years in the NFL for him to start being like, all right, I've got it all figured out, got it all put together, and now I'm a double-digit sack guy. I can see that happening for Will Anderson, and I think that's why you see some folks a little bit lower on him.
Yeah, for Will, it was more for me. I don't see him as, you compare him to Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat, to me, like, I can see the explosion when I turn on the tape. That first step is – Josh Sweat's first step is almost otherworldly. I always called him a poor man's Robert Quinn, which is a hell
Yeah.
of a compliment because Robert Quinn is rich as fuck in those terms. I mean, he has so much talent, so much bend. Will Anderson, when I watch him, I see a guy who's probably not going to just be able to run by people, right? And there are very few of
Yep.
those guys. Like I saw a Von Miller comp, and I was like, no. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
not that. And the thing that concerned me a little bit was I don't see him running everybody over. Now, I don't mean you can bull rush the guy from Vanderbilt, but then when you get in a game against like Texas or LSU, you get these bigger bodies. You've got more established kind of tackles. I saw him getting stoned a lot, kind of on contact, and also with Will. And this is the one area where I think the upside is for him. I don't think he uses his hands that well. Like I don't see he's a really good football player in that he's smart. He knows the game. You can tell he transitions. Play action pass transition is automatic for him. He sifts through traffic well. He's versatile. He's played inside in a 4-eye. You can play him in a 9. He'd probably be a backer. But when a guy's not like overpowering and he's not a burner, I kind of worry a little bit about that top end production from a sack standpoint. When I turned on Tyree Wilson's tape, there were like 5-7 plays in the first game I watched that the plays where you actually make a noise when you watch
That
the play.
that NC State tackle where he's like 45 degrees off the ground, man.
Yes, and I love his long arm. I'm a big fan of length. The thing that worries me about Tyree Wilson, the things you just said for sure, and as a guy that was a late bloomer myself, like I totally see that. But he is on the ground a lot. And part of that is his center of gravity. I do think he steps under himself a lot. I just see him as raw, and I like the Carlos Dunlap comparison. And if you drafted Carlos Dunlap in the top 5, you wouldn't get any shit for it because the guy's almost been a 100-sack guy. He's been consistent. Now he's a really good veteran kind of rotational rusher. So I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm glad you feel like it's not like, hey, I'm not saying Will Anderson's the 5th best end. I'm just saying this competition is a little bit more open than I assumed. Hearing Will's name for multiple years now, he's got that long resume. He's a Bama guy. I do think it's going to be interesting. And to put it that way, I mean, you could see Tyree Wilson go 3, and maybe that's the case.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like we've been spoiled with some crazy top 5 picks at pass rusher in recent years.
Yeah.
You got a Bosa, you got another Bosa, you got Myles Garrett, you got a Brian Burns up there, you got a Vaughn back there. Like you got so many guys in the top 5 who just all of a sudden are turning out like 12 plus, 14 plus sack seasons.
Yes.
Last year's class and this year's class serve as a really good reminder that like edge is still a premium position. It's still going to get drafted early. That doesn't mean every year's top 5 has a guy who's going to pick up a 16-sack season at some point, right? Like that was none of the guys last year, and that's none of the guys this year. They're still going to go early. It's just we can't get too far over our skis with a Will Anderson and Aiden Hutchinson and Tyree Wilson and Trayvon Walker and all these guys. They're just going to be good edge rushers.
It's also hard to it's a tough position to dive right in and be really productive, and that's why Aiden's last year was really impressive to me because you could see him working through the game and learning skills that he was adding to his toolbox. And he came on as the year went on. We talked on our podcast about when he was at Michigan, he really liked standing up. And he hoped that at the next level he was going to be able to stand up because it helps his vision and the whole thing. And, the second half of the season, they started letting him stand up. He got more comfortable. He added a couple new tools to the toolbox. It isn't an automatically translating skill set. The NFL is so different from a pass rush standpoint. Who do you like from the rest of it? Like, is there any reason for a team? Would you call a team crazy if they like Nolan Smith better than Will Anderson?
Crazy? No. They're out there. That man's 240 pounds. You got to have a plan, right?
Yeah,
and that's the thing is, this the league's changing, right? Prototypes at positions are changing. Edge is absolutely getting smaller. There's no two ways around it. With that said, when we go to list edge rushers came into the combine around 240 and had double-digit sack seasons, we go Hassan Reddick, and then we stop because it is a very limited list for guys who came in sub 240. You're really trying to hit a window there with a Hassan Reddick caliber player, with an Uchenna Nwosu sort of a player right now at Seattle. And the thing about these guys is they took legitimate reps off ball, right? They spent parts of their college careers playing off ball. They got really good at block deconstruction. They got really good with their hands and reading out run plays and doing the little stuff such that they could survive on the edge at this lower weight. Smith's film against the run is awesome. Like he cares. He loves it. I don't know what they feed him in Georgia.
He's better against the run than Will Anderson. I don't mean this disparagingly. Will Anderson's fine against the run, but I don't see him as like an edge setter when the tackle comes out. That we used to rate it on like our D-line coach was a hard ass. Like you have a 340-pound tackle. Like I'm supposed to stop on contact. We're graded on do our feet stop like all the way, or do we have to gather and give 6 inches?
Yeah.
Like, I don't see Will and Will doesn't beat up tight ends. Like, I don't see him beating up tight ends the way some of these other guys do. So I see that. Nolan's pretty good against the run.
Yeah, and so I think, and you've heard from like insiders that there's like potential Nolan Smith top 10, top 15 conversation. Again, I don't mind it. I really don't. He's a dynamic player. You don't find an athlete like this in every single class. You got to have a plan. You can't toss him out there and ask him to figure it out for you. That's not going to land. And so if he's going to be limited to the teams he goes to, right? He's going to be limited to teams that are okay with a guy that size. And then it's about, all right, how often do you drop him? How often do you rush him? And what alignment are you rushing him from? So it's a specific thing, but there are teams that are tripping over themselves for the chance to draft him. He's exciting.
And I think the Van Ness kid is versatile enough. I think, like he's stacked. The kid's built, and he could play inside. He's a tall guy, but I think he understands playing at Iowa. He understands leverage enough. He plays with his hands well. My biggest concern about him is obviously like, I know Iowa has a thing where, seniors are going to start and that sort of thing. Well, he couldn't find his way into the starting lineup. My biggest concern with him is watching tape on him. I'd go through a whole game and he wouldn't attack a single edge. I don't know if that's how they coach things. Because sometimes you'll be on a team where they don't encourage guys to attack edges. Maybe they don't give them the tools to attack edges. Maybe it's a thing of getting Lucas Van Ness into an NFL D-line room and he learns a chop club and a swipe and a post, a long arm and a spin off it. Like he doesn't seem to have that toolbox yet. What do you make of him?
Yeah, I like to say that when Lucas Van Ness learns what the things at the end of his wrists are, he's going to be a good player. Someone just got to tell him, though. Once he finds out what they are, it's going to be great. He's such a good example of where we're kind of stuck in this draft class overall, which is you watch him, okay, some nice explosiveness. Oh, there's some power right there. I can get this whole NFL build. Yeah, this makes sense to me. I can see this coming together. You read the scouting reports on him, a few little experience, wasn't a starter. Okay, he's got to get some reps under his belt. This guy makes sense to me. And then you check a mock draft and he's like 10. You're like, what? Wait, it's like cartoon reaction. Like how did that guy get up here? It's just
That's
not a
how
great
I
class.
felt. That's how I felt.
Exactly.
Yeah. It must be the class.
Yeah, and so I'm an Eagles fan, right? I see him at 10, my heart starts doing palpitations. I see him at 30, I'm like, that makes sense to me. Like, end of the first round, take a swing on a guy, get him in the building. He's going to be behind some starters for a year or two, and then see kind of, okay, what creative ways can we use him? Can we play him on the inside, sub-package rusher, so on and so forth. I think there are some dudes. Will McDonald out of Iowa State is one of them. BJ Ojolari out of LSU. Derek Hall out of Auburn, who I think are better rushers now. I think that Van Ness has a great chance to be better than them in 1 or 2 years. And so now you're gambling potential versus product. Kind of where do you want to go?
Yeah, it seems like he'd be a luxury for a team that can develop him. How about inside? Do you think Jalen Carter's back in shape? Were you concerned about the pro day? I don't think we've talked since the pro day.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I struggle a lot with it because why was Carter's pro day poor? Well, he got arrested a couple weeks beforehand, and I feel like that affects a man's life.
I agree.
Affects his preparation for his pro day. Yeah. Carter's film is unbelievable, such that I'm not going to let a bad bag drill affect the way that I think about him too much. Like I watch him play, and there's some dominant play. The weight is more of a concern, right? Especially because he didn't play a ton of snaps every game, every week at Georgia. They just didn't need him to. So you do have, I think, some conditioning concerns and some ideal play weight concerns. Just understanding, okay, how many snaps am I going to get out of you in year one? But then you watch him turn a corner at 310 pounds, and you're like, oh, I don't get to draft this every year. This doesn't come out every year. Movement skills for a guy who's a true 310 is really, really impressive. And so I'm inclined to just fall back and trust the tape on Carter. Obviously, for NFL teams, the majority of their homework isn't so much on the tape as it is on the off-field stuff. Why did he make the mistakes that he did? Has he made more mistakes? What's Georgia program kind of done for him? Can we trust him to keep his head screwed on straight when he's a professional? And that's a part of the process that's just always behind closed doors, very difficult to read into.
Yeah, I got a public urination before pro day, and it really stressed me out. I really did.
That's serious stuff now, Chris.
That was the one thing they found on me. I was like, guilty as charged. I had to pee.
You got me.
Yeah, exactly. Who do you think's the best team fit for him?
Ooh, I like that question. I always get him to Chicago at 9, and I start thinking to myself, are the Bears really not going to take an elite defender when you start to look at their roster? Matt Eberflus, that defense, man, they like to line up 4 and rush 4, and when you don't got a true 4 deep and some dominant players, that can be a long way to die in an NFL game where you're not like adding to the rush and you're not creating confusion. They could use a strong interior player. The Eagles at 10 is awesome. I mean, if you want to know how well he would fit with Jordan Davis, the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs won the national championship. We have some data on it. It wasn't too bad. Yeah. And so he's a guy who I think can fit there extremely well. But this is a true over tackle. This is a true line him up at 3 tech, try to get the tackle away from him, get him a 2-way go, and let him work. Like that, and that's going to fit on teams until the sun consumes the earth, man. I mean that's a fit everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm picking at the top of the draft and I need an edge, and on some level I need a defensive tackle, no edge rusher wows me enough to pick unless you absolutely have a necessity for it over a Jalen Carter. This guy is, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's well worth it, and I just don't see a need unless you're sure about the other guy to go with anybody but him early if you're looking at defensive line. How early could he go?
I think Seattle at 5 is the first spot where I go, okay, maybe Carter. And they've taken guys who have some character questions before. I know that Quantrill Diggs was joking about this on Richard Sherman's podcast, where it's just like, get him to the Pacific Northwest. Yep. You don't know anybody up here. This is a bit of a fresh start for you. So they're at 5, which like they got real needs of defensive tackle. That's where I start to think about it. But they're tricky because they can take quarterback, they can take an edge rusher. Like there's a lot for them. I think 5 is where you start. Lions at 6, you see that connection sometimes. I would be very surprised. Given the way that Dan Campbell's talked about him publicly and given the way they run character there, I don't think that's a spot. So to me, like 5 is the ceiling, and then 9, 10 is the floor. Drew Rosenhaus, who's his agent, said, we're not meeting with teams outside of the top 10 because Carter's going top 10. Okay, so somebody told him something. Either Bears at 9 or Eagles at 10 said, hey, we got you. So I think the 5, 10 is your range.
All right, Kalijah Kancey, love the guy.
I'm very curious what you think about Kancey.
He stood out to me. I got to tell you, the interior D-line outside of Jalen Carter didn't move me. I really like this kid. I'm a big believer, and I know you talked about his length or his arm length. What did he measure out at?
So he came in with 30 and 5/8 inch arms, which is the 7th shortest arms of a defensive lineman ever at the combine. Yes.
That's the problem.
That's the issue.
When you looked at Aaron Donald, and we don't like comping anyone to Aaron Donald, but he's a Pittsburgh guy who's undersized. So, at least you say like, well, there's a precedent for this. I'm a big believer in like, if I were a GM, I would draft short fucking D tackles, the shortest ones I could find, but they need to have long arms. That's that's your height. Your height is your arm length. Okay. Like functionally in the NFL. In fact, taller players inside, like there's actually nothing to it except for blocking down or knocking down passes. The arm length concerns me. However, I look at his tape, and the guy knows how to get skinny. He knows how to attack edges. The arm length is one thing if you're just a power player, but if you got finesse and you got wiggle in your game, maybe you can overcome it. But 30 is getting to be a problem. I mean, that's down there. Yeah,
when you start looking at comparable guys, you don't find a lot of names you remember. You start looking at that list like, oh, I kind of remember Elijah Qualls was in the league for a second. Anthony
Elijah
Zettel,
Qualls. Yeah, okay. I played with Elijah Qualls.
Yeah, right. 6th-round pick out of Washington. But in general, it's not a list of guys. When you look for defensive linemen who've had at least I think it's 10 sacks over the course of their career. Yeah. There's only one who's got who's got substantial numbers with under 31-inch arms, and it's he played for the Bills for a long time. Kyle Williams? Kyle Williams. That's who it is.
Yeah, Kyle Williams.
So right. If you're real crafty, and that's the thing about watching Cansey is like he looks like a point guard out there sometimes, right? Where
Yeah.
he's just like manipulating space and finding a little tight window and bending
Yep.
underneath. If you're real crafty, real quick, real wily, you can penetrate. But the issue for me is like I think he can do that, but now as a defensive coach, I have to build my defensive line, build my rush plan around getting this guy the space he needs to work.
Yeah.
He's really got to be productive in terms of sacking the quarterback for me to justify that approach and build my rush plans. And he's got concerns with getting quarterbacks down because he doesn't have length and because he's not very heavy, right? And so you saw his film against Hendon Hooker. He's got a sack on there, but he had other opportunities to get Hooker to the ground and couldn't do it. And so I worry about, okay, like, yeah, I can get you in this role where you succeed, but is the juice worth the squeeze? What am I doing to my other 3 defensive linemen to get you in this spot?
That's a real thing, like arm length and finishing.
100%.
You can see it in the tape I watched Tyree Wilson. Like there's a play he's out of it, got a nice rush, but the quarterback steps up. He just puts his arm out there, forces the fumble. You see Dunlap do it all the time. You see guys with great length do it all the time. Rousseau. The difference between actually having that production and not, and just having a good-looking play on tape, which I had a lot of because I didn't have like great length from an arm standpoint. There's so many plays. If I just had 2 more inches there, that's another sack. And you've got those concerns with Cansey. Who would be the number 2 for you then? I'm assuming based on his mini-me arms that you wouldn't put him to.
You watch any Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin?
I have not.
Oh, Chris, treat yourself.
He's pretty. I treat myself. All right, okay. I like this.
Benton
Bo
can
Allen
play.
would like this. Okay, all right.
Yeah, Benton can play. Now, Jim Leonard defense, right? And so they're using this guy all over the place, and he's moving gaps, and he's
Pull his
lining up
tape
over the nose.
Matt. Pull some
Yeah.
highlights up as we talk about him.
Yeah, but Benton's got that squatty build, right? Talk about a guy who's got some good natural leverage to him, got some good thickness to him, and then he can play on all 3 downs. He can defend the run. He's got the length to do it. He's got the explosiveness to do it, and then he can push the pocket as well, and he can finish around a corner. Benton is I comped him to Quan Short. I think he's a round 2 player. I like me a Keanu Benton quite a bit.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna check him out.
Our friend Bo Allen actually helped train him.
Yeah, Bo Allen trained him.
Well, there you go.
Oh, so that we have an in for the podcast if he's any good. That's good.
Yeah, so I like Benton, and then the other player who's a fun watch is Gervin Dexter. He's out of Florida, nose tackle, just a son of a gun, just a big angry young man. A lot of fun.
We love that.
Yeah.
And you need that to be a zero nose because otherwise it's a long day at the office.
Getting
okay.
moved.
So corners, take me through the best couple and the schemes that they fit in. Because I think people sometimes, like, I know you don't, but there's a lot of people, look at the Lions who might take a corner. People have talked about Gonzalez going to Detroit. Like Okuda last year, the scheme changed and everything that he was working on kind of crumbled, and then he's on the block, and now he's in Atlanta, and their scheme's different, and he might thrive there. I mean, like, it is such a scheme-dependent position. Take me through the top prospects and what schemes that they fit best in.
Yeah, so your clear top 2 are Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon and Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois.
Yep.
Gonzalez played at Colorado, transferred to Oregon with the quarterback, the defensive backs coach there. Smooth as silk, man. I mean, just 6'2", 200 and moves as easy as you'll ever see. People talk about A.J. Terrell with him. People talk about Pat Surtain with him. Surtain's a little rich for my blood. Gonzalez at times has some recognition issues. I think he'd be a little bit late to identify where the ball is, a little bit late to identify route concepts. But that A.J. Terrell, where he's got the size to move with the good receivers on the outside, but he's not deficient in movement skills. So when he gets hit with a Justin Jefferson, he can stick with him. That, I think, to me, is a good rhyme and reason for Christian Gonzalez. He's going to be more man coverage, as is Witherspoon. Witherspoon can probably do both a little bit better. Gonzalez, again, I think his eyes and his feel needs some work. And so we got a zone corner. You really need them to know common route concepts, be able to feel space, split those routes. And that's where Gonzalez is weak right now. Devon Witherspoon is a son of a gun. I mean, he's 5'11", $180, and just hates wide receivers, hates quarterbacks, hates offensive coordinators, hates passes. Very upset whenever a ball comes his way. Great on-ball production, great aggressiveness. Really, really good at playing through that catch point. Right, he gets tight to receivers, he bullies them, he hassles them. He just makes catches really, really, really challenging. The other thing that's cool about Witherspoon's film is that before he was playing in this defense, he was playing for Lovey. A lot of people head coach at Illinois. He was playing Tampa too. And so he's got experience squatting down in that flat, playing with eyes and baiting quarterbacks into throws. I think he's a little bit more scheme versatile. However, he's 5'11", $180. And so for some teams, they're going to look at the size and say, no, this guy's too small. When you go and you look for corners who went in the first round with that thin of a frame, you're in like the Jair Alexander, Denzel Ward family, which is a great family to be in until you start looking at like the DeAndre Bakers and the Noah Igbinogheni's and like some of these guys who went later in the round 1 who just couldn't hang at the NFL level because of their size. So Witherspoon, he's got that Jair Alexander cut of his jib, right? Where he's just aggressive and chatty and physical. But you're hoping that frame and that size can hold up. I like him a little better than Gonzalez. Both of them, I think, ideal man coverage players. And the same is true of Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State behind him.
There's a big guy.
Yeah. Joey Porter Jr.'s pockets are at his knees, man. I mean, he's got 34.5-inch arms. Like that. He's a true press man, dude. He's got to stay up at the line of scrimmage. When you go and look for versatility, the player that I like is Deonte Banks out of Maryland. Tested really, really well. Jumped out of the gym, ran sub 4.4, has NFL size. And then Maryland just asked him to solve problems. Step into the slot, defend the run, play in the zone, split routes. There's so many reps of him yelling at his safety because his safety doesn't know what's going on. He's trying to explain stuff to him that's like not even within his cone, right? He's got great recognition, great feel. Ball skills, kind of close your eyes sometimes, watch him try to catch the football. So we're in that like Byron Jones realm, that Ronald Darby realm, where maybe they don't produce on the ball as much as you like, but altogether a complete corner prospect. I think all of those guys are round 1 players, and you'll probably see 1 or 2 more by the end of round 1.
Where does a linebacker go first?
Oh, sweet Christmas. This is not a class for fans of linebacker
As you
play.
can tell by my curtailed question.
Yeah. I think that you can see one go to Buffalo at the end of the first round. They've been connected to Jack Campbell out of Iowa, who Campbell would have been a great linebacker in 2005. I don't know about 2023. I'm worried about that. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas is the name that I would circle.
I like him.
Talk about, he's very enticing. I like him more than is responsible. I like him a lot. And that's the thing, as I talked about Hassan Reddick and Uchenna Nwosu, guys who played linebacker now play on the edge. Sanders played on the edge at Alabama and then went back to Arkansas and played at middle linebacker. And you can just tell when he blitzes and when he drops onto the edge to be a pass rusher, he just gets it. And he's not thinking. It's just the brain's doing the work for him. He understands how to find an angle and slip it. He's got great movement skills, great length. He's a very tempting player. It's just he's totally theory at this point. You really got to, if you're playing a true linebacker, it's going to take some time for him to get accustomed to the role. Tremaine Edmonds, coming out of Virginia Tech, who he went to Buffalo, was a guy who was 20, hadn't started that much, great measurables, just needed a year or 2 under his belt in the NFL, and then he became a solid player.
How did the guy from Montana end up last year in Atlanta? Did he get a lot of?
Troy Anderson. They ended up just kind of sticking him out there in the back half of the first year, and just kind of, all right, let's get this guy some reps. I mean, he's a heat-seeking missile when he arrives.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
You said Drew Sanders. I don't know. It might be just kind of lengthy white linebacker. Just
right.
But yeah, I like that kid coming out. Needless to say, I didn't crunch his tape a lot.
Yeah, he was a guy who's there. Eventually at some point you got to put him on the field and just let him start learning, and that's I think where they ended up with him last year. Yeah. Obviously, Dean Pease was the DC there, and so there's send him. You can't cover, rush him. They're just throwing him at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. I think Ryan Nielsen's gonna be really good for him. The new DC in Atlanta, who they've churned out good linebacker after good linebacker after good linebacker there in New Orleans for a while.
Good. Like that kid. Okay. Offense, running backs. This is an interesting position to me, obviously, because of the differing opinions on the value of running backs, the whole thing. First, Eagles question, since we both have an interest in the Eagles. Do you think there's a chance they change course on their theory on running backs? And if Bijan Robinson's there, would they take a shot at a guy like this, especially considering Jalen Hurts' new deal and needing to build pieces around him?
Yeah, say a prayer for it. We'd all, as football watchers, we'd all be so lucky to see it. With that said, I'm not holding my breath. The effort to get Hurts to maybe carry the ball fewer times and protect him from more hits, to me, is less conditional on the quality of back back there and more conditional on the coaching staff making the choice. The
Yes,
number
yeah.
of times during an Eagles game last year, I'm just screaming at the TV, just put the ball in the belly of the back. No more read options, no more RPOs, no more play action, read pocket. Call a run and put the ball in the belly of the back and let Stoutland's group go to work. And I very much expect them to take a back at some point in this draft, decently early, but I think 10 is way too rich. I don't think Bijan's going to be there at 30. So while
Charbonnet, I like
him,
Charbonnet, the kid from UCLA. I like him a lot. And I was going to ask you, like, if you don't get Robinson and you're like an Eagles team that wants to pick one up in a later round, are you more of you look for that kind of modern do-it-all returner, speed guy? Or are you drafting somebody like this Charbonnet guy?
all the above. I like everybody you just named. It's a good running back class. I definitely tend to lean once we get to the role player world of running backs, right? We get after round 2 and we start talking about guys who are going to be committee players. I always want to have a player on my committee who is a home run threat, right? Who has that speed to kind of hit the house call. You can see that in the way Philly managed their room, right? That was Sanders for them. He was that, okay, when he gets to the second level, he's got the speed. He leaves and they bring in Rashad Penny, who, when Rashad Penny gets to the second level, it's house call. It's just, the issues that he has staying health, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's your Devon Achane, right? That's that player out of Texas A&M who's, was like a high school sprinter, unbelievable speed. He's actually like weirdly good between the tackles. He's a tough son of a gun. But Charbonnet is just right. All reliable, smooth, Eddie steady. And then he actually can give you a little bit as a pass catcher too, just because UCLA used him as such. UCLA would use him as a safety valve for their quarterback there, and he was successful catching the ball outside of his frame, making a guy miss with wiggle. Charbonnet is very, very likable. I have a lot of running backs ranked like top 100 or so in this class. It's just a glut of talent at the position. Achane, Gibbs, Charbonnet, Eric Gray out of Oklahoma is extremely talented. Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. Awesome film. Just got knee injuries, and you just got to wonder how long you can kind of keep him upright. But oh man, such a natural runner. Like there's a flavor for everybody in this class. Whatever role you need, you're the Cowboys, and you like go a Zeke, and now you need a banger. There's a guy for you. You're the Eagles, and now you need a speed threat, right? A Miles Sanders replacement who can catch pass. There's a guy for you. Like there's a flavor for everybody in this group.
Yeah, and Achane and Gibbs, because they're going to be kind of compared to each other probably. And Gibbs is the more well thought of back, I guess, universally right now. But when I watched him, I didn't see him like making a ton of guys miss in the open field. Like he gets there, his wiggle isn't as good as his straight line. And I thought I think Achane, like you said it, in between the tackles, you could see a little bit more instinct, a little bit more vision. And another thing with the Gibbs guy, he'd get to the fucking sideline. And he's so damn fast, but how some people can't run that hoop, like where you get to the sideline. Now you've got to round it and go straight, and like he's more linear, like straight line. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know how early I'd take a guy like that, but I just thought it was interesting comparing those two guys, and then the McBride guy from UAB. I don't hate him. I mean, he's definitely a later round pick, but. You're right. Like this is a really good class. There's a lot of flavors to choose from.
Yeah, McBride, dude, talk about proof over volume. The whole offense right there running through McBride, and he's able to sustain that level of volume and
right, exactly. I wonder this. I really wanted to ask you, like, do you think running back's the most college team dependent position? Is it up there like? Like, would you be more apt to take a guy from a smaller school that maybe had less big holes to run through, at this position relative to other positions? Does that factor in at all when you evaluate running backs?
Yeah. It definitely has to. Like, level of competition is going to matter everywhere. And then with the running back, because the running game is so dependent on other players, every single offensive lineman, and then the 7 guys that are in the box, 6 guys that are in the box for the opposing defense, that context becomes magnified. I don't think it gets over quarterback for that exact same reason. Where, you watch
quarterback's the
exactly. Quarterback's the exception. Yeah, exactly. Like I think that it's never going to touch quarterback, but it's definitely up there. And then the other thing with running back is you start talking about that volume and seeing what's the tread on these guys' tires, right? And that's where you look at a McBride and say, well, okay, he's got 283 carries last year. Chase Brown out of Illinois has like over 600 career carries. Like these guys who go back to school, it's sick. It's awesome. Like they love college and whatever, but that gets factored in for NFL teams where you want to make sure a guy's not going to run out of tread on his tires early in his career with you.
Well, yeah, Bill loved Alabama guys, and I was like, okay, Bill. Well, I never said this, but in my head, I was like, all right, Bill. These guys have already played like 5 years of pro football.
Right.
Dante Hightower's played 30 years of football. I mean, when Barrett Jones got to the Rams, he was beat up. There is depending on not only the position you play, the volume, but also the school that you go to and how they do things, the conference. These are things you got to take into account. How about the guys blocking for these running backs? Do you like the Paris kid from Ohio State, or do you like the Skoronsky kid from Northwestern? If you had to make a pick in the top 10.
No, great question. I'm a Skoronsky guy. I think that we're getting better at dealing with offensive tackles who have maybe suboptimal length. Those guys are doing better surviving at the NFL level. Rashawn Slater, who's the last great tackle to come out of Northwestern 2 years ago, is a good example. Skoronsky, man, he's so good.
Really?
The film is it's awesome. He just understands running game, passing game, levers, angles, adjustments, take it inside, take it outside. He's balanced. He's under control. Like, he's just teach-tape. Zerline, right? Lance, who's obviously Pop's an offensive line coach, calmed into Zach Martin. Almost fell out of my chair. I was like, Lance, you got to relax, brother. That's Zach Martin. Talk about we don't comp people to Aaron Donald. We don't comp people to Zach Martin either. You can't touch him. So that was eye-popping. Yeah, he might be a guard at the NFL level, but I really think if you start him at tackle, he's going to be able to hang out there. I think that he can do it. Paris Johnson, likable, a little bit high cut, some balance issues, some anchoring versus power issues. Really big guy, really great length, right? So he has all the tools that you want. But that's also true of Broderick Jones out of Georgia. It's also true of Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. DeJuan Jones, his teammate at Ohio State, is an enormous human being. There's a lot of ideal length, size, weight, foot quickness guys in this class who still need a little bit of polish. There's only one dude right now who I would take a nap if he was my left tackle in the pocket, and that's Skoronsky.
Yeah, he's ready. Yeah, that makes sense. Tight ends, man. What is the range that you've identified that Mayer could fall in? Because I had heard some people have speculated he could be a top 10 pick. Now that's kind of faded a little bit, like he could be in that 5 to 10 range. But now, how far down does that range go? Like, how long could he sit, and how long could how short could that wait be as well?
Yeah, so the tricky thing for Mayer is I don't think he did anything wrong. I think the tight end class is awesome, right? Like, you go to take a Kyle Pitts top 5, okay, cool. But then if you're going to take a tight end top 10, top 15, he's got to be a high-tier player without a lot of other options. And the class is just super deep. First round, second round, third round, ton of guys. And so for Mayer, I expect Mayer more likely to be a back end of the first round, back half of the first round, than to be top half of the first round. Green Bay at 15, I think we start having the conversation. Detroit at 18 is a spot that makes sense. Tampa Bay at 19, also possible. Once we get to Dallas at 26, the word on the street is that Michael Mayer is available at 26. Michael Mayer is a Cowboy. There will be no further questions, which they have an opening there. And so I think 15 to 26 is kind of where you're looking for him. I do expect him to be the first tight end off the board. There was a dalliance there with Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. He's a great receiver, really cool mover, awesome player. He's got back injuries. He wasn't able to do the entire pre-draft process. Yeah, there's worries about that. And tight ends, man, back injuries. Guess what routes tight ends run? They run seams and benders. You're taking some hits. Like it is a tough position to have a back injury at. So I don't know. I don't think Kincaid's that first guy off the board anymore. I think it's Mayer.
Could the Cowboys trade up if they love him that much? I mean, now that they've let the world know that they love him that much.
There's nothing better than a Dallas Cowboy pre-draft process where by the time we hit the draft, everybody knows who Jerry Jones' top 19 prospects are. It's definitely possible. I think we see a very trade-heavy first round. Quarterbacks obviously driving it in the top 10. I think there's going to be a run on tackles once we start to get into the early teens. And then, like I say, it's not a great class. And so everybody's boards are going to look a little bit different, and all of a sudden guys are going to be falling that other teams didn't think were going to be falling, and teams are going to be more aggressive getting up, and now there's more comp picks than they ever were before, so there's more trades or picks to trade than ever before. Everybody could trade up for anybody at any given moment, which I know is not good analysis to give on a podcast, not helpful, but that's what I got.
No, but that's good. That's good. The last thing I'll ask you about this year's draft, the TCU wideout, the big guy, Quentin Johnson. The NFL said, hey, don't come to the draft. We think you might slide a bit. I know that I've heard rumblings that there's probably only one receiver going in the first round. How do you see this wide receiver class panning out, and there's so much variability in size and style of play, and the NFL wide receivers getting smaller. How do you compare apples to oranges when it comes to these guys?
100% right. Daniel Jeremiah has the line that he likes to say, which is you want to build your wide receiver room like a basketball team. You need a stretch four. You need a point guard. You need a 3 and D. Like you just need guys of different sizes. Then you kind of mix and match the roles. This year is the year of the small, man. If you already have a small, it is not a class for you. We got Zay Flowers at 183, Josh Addison 177, Josh Downs 179, Jalen Hyatt at 179. Like it is just a small class. Even Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's decently sized, like 6 foot, 190, 192, it's probably a slot. Like it's just the role he plays. So Johnson benefits from being, I think, emphatically the best receiver who falls clearly into the big category, right? It's like him, Cedric Tillman, and then that's kind of it. Yeah. Will he go round one? I think, that's become a bit of a question. He's one of these guys who suffered from unnecessary pre-draft promising, and he came in below expectations. Like, there were rumors like, Quentin Johnson can run a 4.3, and you'd watch him and go, this guy can't run a 4.3. What are we talking about? And then he went out and didn't run a 4.3, and everybody's like, Quentin Johnson, loser of the combine. Nobody should have ever said he's going to run a 4.3. That never made any sense. Right. So he's kind of got a little bit of that going for him right now, where he just underperformed athletically. But when you watch him, it's the craftiness, it's the comfort through contact that kind of makes it for him. He was never really a big burner. The question for him is, if you're this big, why are we basket catching stuff in the air? Why are we got our hands flipped the wrong way? You ever watch DK Metcalf and go like, DK, just catch the ball. Like, stop doing whatever you're doing, just catch it. Quentin Johnson's the same thing, where his catch technique is just a little bit haphazard right now. And he's making like acrobatic catches. He's all over the place. He's got a good catch radius. He needs a good wide receiver coach for a year, and then you'll feel a lot better with him like on the downfield bomb stuff. And so that kind of slides him down a little bit. Smith and Jigba go first. Yeah. I think Zay Flowers is going to sneak his way into round one. After that, wide receiver class is weird.
All right. As for next year, I heard you say that you can predict next year's top 5 better than you can predict this year's top 5. Give it a go.
Yeah, that's because I can maybe get 2 picks of next year's top 5 correct. Yeah. And at this stage, I'm not sure I can get
Who
more.
Who are the best 5 players? We know it starts with Caleb Williams. And I guess before you rank the top 5 players, who's the biggest candidate to tank this year for Caleb Williams?
Oh, I love that. I do think the Cardinals, I mean, if you look at that roster, you can't tell me this team's planning to do a thing in 2023. So I think that they are a strong 2024 make a quarterback move candidate and then go take Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a quarterback at USC. Marvin Harrison Jr., who, Marvin Harrison Jr., which
he's a dog.
I haven't started to reach that stage yet where I feel super old by who has kids, but Joe Porter and Marvin Harrison is really starting to throw me a little bit.
Yes.
Harrison Jr. is going to be about as good of a wide receiver prospect as we see. There are 2 great offensive tackle prospects, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, and then Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, who was going to be like a top 15 pick this year and went back to school. Kudos to him. And then you have Drake May, the quarterback out of UNC. And Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, who Brock Bowers is really good at football. I don't know how early we're taking tight ends anymore. The Kyle Pitts thing didn't really work, but holy smokes, Brock Bowers can play.
Stanford Steve is in love with the kid. Like, he's just in love with him. He's that's his fan club right there. Okay, that's good. So we jumped ahead to next year. The last question I want to ask you, it's not football related. Sometimes Ringer personalities go on the rewatchables. If you went on the rewatchables, what movie would you want to rewatch?
I'm not sure. The reason is because whenever they bring it up to me, they always joke and say they want to bring me on a podcast called The Watchables, because I've never seen any of these movies. And they always
okay. Yeah. You've never seen. You're not a big movie guy.
Not a big movie guy, and then they're usually rewatching old movies. And the thing about old movies is I was not doing stuff when they were on, and so I never caught them. Right?
You've seen The Godfather?
Nope.
Have you seen Jaws?
Nope.
Have you seen Star Wars?
Yeah, I've seen Star Wars. Star Wars is great.
Oh yeah. Okay, keep him going, Matt. Give him another one.
This is why I know so much about
Give him
football.
another one. Yeah, you said fuck.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I've seen that one.
Stripes.
How about Happy Gilmore? He's seen Happy Gilmore.
No, I know he golfs in that one, but that's all I got.
Keep going.
Stripes.
Never even heard of that. Couldn't tell you
anything.
anything.
Caddyshack.
They also golf in that one. That was on at my in-laws the other day, and I was like, "What movie is this?" They were like, "Caddyshack," obviously. And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's that scene. My bad." And I had not seen it.
Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow.
Never heard of it.
Ah!
Never heard of it. It's got one of the greatest actors of all
John Travolta.
time.
Congrats to John.
We're gonna do a podcast where we have Ben on and just ask him if he's seen
Forrest
that movie.
Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah. I think so, a long time ago. He runs box of chocolates. There's a shrimp boat.
He runs.
When I first went on, the first time I went on Mina's show for like the 5 questions at the end, she just asked me about like 80s television, and she got so mad at me she ended the show early. She was like, "We have to leave now. Like this is not. I can't do this anymore."
Okay, so how about Remember the Titans? Fuck, I mean,
I love Remember the Titans. It's a football movie, so that falls into my scope.
All right,
Invincible.
good. Yeah, Invincible. Not.
Phillies.
Yeah, Philly stuff. Well, that's good. We got to work on this. Benjamin Solak, he knows all things football, no things movies. But he's not here for the movies. Thanks for the time. Trying to lose your mind over the next little bit here, and hope your mock draft hits like perfectly, bro.
Yeah, every year, 100% guarantee. That's the Ben Solak way. We just get all the picks right. There we go. Appreciate you, Chris.
Appreciate you, man. See ya. Listen to the full podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast streaming platforms. Wherever you want to get the podcast, you can get the podcast. Pretty simple. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Podcasts get pretty wild. This is real tame.